Hello, I'm Erik Gensler, Capacity Interactive's president and founder, and welcome to See Eye to Eye Live in our session, 10 Things We've Learned So Far About Selling Digital Programming. I'm a white male with brown hair, brown eyes, and a beard, and I'm wearing an olive green polo shirt. My pronouns are he, him. And today I'm in the native land of the Agua Caliente band of the Cahuilla Nation in Palm Springs, California. When the Southern Pacific Railroad was built in the 1870s, displacing native peoples, the US government, divided the land into a checkerboard of squares. Even-numbered parcels went to the tribe, odd ones to the railroad to entice new settlers. This checkerboard of ownership still remains today, and the tribe currently represents the largest single landowner in Palm Springs. Why do we do land acknowledgements? Well, the teaching of US history has left out many voices and difficult truths, including forcibly removing people from lands they inhabited in order to create an idealized nationalistic identity. It is important that we share history to understand how it impacts systems we may otherwise take for granted or inadvertently accept today. This is one part of our ongoing work to be more inclusive. We have evolved our speaker introductions to include visual descriptions, pronouns, and land acknowledgements. We are not experts in this work, and we are still learning, and we will pass along resources in the follow-up materials from today so you can join us in this learning process. We are now almost 1 year into the pandemic, believe it or not. I believe it. And the Capacity Interactive team has helped arts organizations market and sell hundreds of digital programs over this past year. Today, we are gathered to share what we have learned, what has worked and what hasn't worked, in order to help you get the most out of your digital programming. Now, we certainly do not have all the answers to this new and always evolving format. But at Capacity, we believe strongly in the growth mindset based on the work of psychologist Carol Dweck. A growth mindset thrives on challenge and sees failures not as evidence of unintelligence, but as a springboard for growth and for stretching our existing abilities. And this year has certainly stretched us all, and we're eager to share our wins and our learnings with you. This is quite a popular topic, as I know it's on many people's mind in our field. And almost 1,000 of you registered either to watch live today or afterwards on YouTube. And if you're enjoying this program, please like and subscribe this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today, you'll hear from 3 of my fabulous Capacity Interactive colleagues who will each present case studies from their client work for around 10 minutes each. Here are the 10 takeaways that they will cover throughout their presentation. I think there's actually more than 10 takeaways, but in summary, these are 10, and we'll show these again after the presentations. And after the 3 presentations, the remaining time will be left for your questions. So please enter your questions in the chat at any time, and we will get to as many as we can during the Q&A period. And this session will live on YouTube, so you can watch it again and share. So now, please join me in welcoming our first presenter, Samantha Kindler, Senior Consultant at Capacity Interactive. And I've always wanted to say this. Take it away, Sam.
Thanks, Erik. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a white woman with wavy brown hair, blue eyes, and I am wearing a dark green shirt. I'm coming to you from the traditional land of the Munsee Lenape tribe. I am a senior consultant, and I have been working at Capacity Interactive for almost 6 years now. I work with a variety of different clients here at Capacity, including the Guthrie Theater, the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, Seattle Shakespeare Company, the National Ballet of Canada, and several more. I am really excited to be here today to talk to you about virtual programming. I think we can all agree that navigating virtual programming has been a journey, right? You all are working so hard to create art in a new medium, and you're challenged with marketing it in an ever-changing digital landscape, and of course now facing competition from companies like Netflix and Disney+. So while we definitely do not have all of the answers, I'm going to share some of the strategy, considerations, and takeaways from my work with Steppenwolf Theater Company in Chicago and Ballet Met in Columbus, hopefully to guide you on your journey. So let's start off with Steppenwolf, the premier ensemble theater company located in Chicago, and how they leverage their virtual membership to reach new audiences all over the world. So this fall, Steppenwolf launched their virtual membership called Steppenwolf Now. You can see their lovely graphic here for Steppenwolf Now. Their goal was, of course, to provide something to their members to keep them engaged while they were going to be dark on stage for who knows how long. But they also saw this as an excellent opportunity to reach some new audiences with the Steppenwolf brand. Keep in mind while I go through this that this was just a membership and that none of these productions were available to purchase as single tickets. Steppenwolf Now consists of 6 original virtual experiences showcasing the work of some amazing artists, of course, featuring Steppenwolf's company. While it is free for members, it's just $75 for new members. So if you think about that, that's just $12.50 per production for the closest thing that you can get to a Steppenwolf experience right from your couch. We are talking about high quality, exclusive experiences ranging from radio plays to short form programming and, of course, full length filmed plays at what I think is a pretty reasonable price. A major benefit to releasing a membership as opposed to a one-off single ticket event is that it can help build up anticipation as these productions are released one by one throughout the year. It allows them to continue to bring in new audiences each time they release one. So if possible, consider packaging your virtual programming for a longer term experience for both existing and new audiences. So to launch our advertising for Steppenwolf Now, I worked with the Steppenwolf marketing team, the fabulous team over there, and we had some decisions to make. A common theme that I've seen come up a lot with the emergence of virtual programming is the fact that we now have the ability to reach audiences outside of our normal sphere. And for Steppenwolf, this was a major goal of theirs. Therefore, we decided to target both existing audiences as well as new audiences in several major cities all over the country with particular theater interests. Keep in mind, though, if you do choose to reach new audiences with your virtual programming, it will most likely impact your ROI. Reaching bottom funnel audiences like site visitors and single ticket buyers definitely would have been a more cost-effective choice if we had honed in on those very, very bottom audiences that would most likely return solid revenue. However, with the goals in mind of the Steppenwolf team, we decided to prioritize reach, knowing that it would likely hinder that ROI. Over our several months of Facebook and Instagram campaigns to date, we have returned a 70% ROI on the investment. And that is lower than we typically see for most Steppenwolf campaigns. But keep in mind, again, that while we, of course, wanted to drive revenue for Steppenwolf Now, we also had reach and awareness building as our goals. So let's dive into those KPIs. We started the campaign in September with lead generation. Here you can see the lead form that we promoted, particularly to pique the interest of those new audiences that I was talking about in several major cities with particular theater interests. This was an invitation for people to sign up to get Steppenwolf Now information directly to their inbox. And in the end, it drove 910 new leads, 58% of which were from brand new audiences in that interest targeting. So that was 910 new audience members growing Steppenwolf's permission base and helping them continue to grow their relationship with those audiences. We continue to promote more and more content over the next several months on Facebook and Instagram. And in addition to leads generated, we look towards reach to gauge our success. To date, our Facebook and Instagram campaigns have reached over 126,000 people. and 43% of those people have been outside of Illinois. Of course, we also wanted to drive actual revenue and purchases for Steppenwolf Now, and we certainly did so over the course of the last few months. In fact, 25% of the Steppenwolf Now purchases reported to our campaigns have been new to file audiences. And Steppenwolf as a whole has reported that 40% of their Steppenwolf Now purchases have been new to file. So those are people with no previous ticket history with Steppenwolf. So as you can see, again, the digital programming can be a great way to reach new audiences. With this strong messaging, the beautiful programming, and accessible pricing, Steppenwolf also saw that their digital programming was effective at re-engaging lapsed audiences. Roughly a quarter of all Steppenwolf Now buyers who were returning buyers had not been to an in-person show in 4 or more years. And a quarter of all returning audiences had only been to one show ever. Another learning is that the memberships prove to make great gifts. This is another perk over a membership as opposed to single tickets. We portion out a part of our campaign to spend over the holidays to encourage gift giving. Steppenwolf provided this very highly targeted 50% off dark post segmented just to bottom funnel audiences, particularly existing members, to get them to buy a membership as a gift for somebody else. This turned out to be another great success. Their goal was to sell 500 gift memberships, and to date, they have sold over 700 gift memberships. All right, so it would not be a Capacity Interactive session if we did not talk about the importance of storytelling, and Steppenwolf Now is certainly no exception. A key takeaway for me, though, was the power of showing and not just telling. As you could see, we teed up the virtual membership for our audiences, but it wasn't until we started promoting actual footage of the productions that the campaigns felt like they really took off even further. Trailers and production photos performed quite well, particularly for new audiences. This makes sense. Virtual programming can come in so many different forms. And while your nearest and dearest might shell out, $75 purely based on their admiration for you, some are going to want to see more explicitly what they're getting into. This is an example of one of those posts. This is a production photo post from their first production, What Is Left Burns, and it gives you a little taste of that experience. And here is the trailer for What Is Left Burns.
What would you want to do? If you could do whatever you wanted, what would you want to do?
Strange how a phone call could change your day, take you away.
It's been a long time
from the feeling of being alone. Bless the telephone.
Gonna be in New York next month.
Yeah.
It's nice the way you say my name.
She's fine. I'm fine. She doesn't know about
the same. It's when you tell me how you feel.
So as you can see, that really could give new and existing audiences a taste of what their experience was going to be like when they watched this production. Again, going back to the value of showing instead of just telling. All right. So now let's talk about goal setting. I think that everybody feels a little bit lost when it comes to projecting goals for virtual programming. And like everybody else, Steppenwolf had no real historical knowledge to inform what goals for virtual programming could be like. But they had to start somewhere. So they hoped to acquire 750 new members. To date, they have doubled that, selling over 1,500 new virtual memberships, and that doesn't include those gift memberships that I mentioned earlier. They've also been able to reach people of all ages, and the average age of a Steppenwolf Now member is actually 10 years younger than their onstage audience is. They have virtual members in all 50 states and 7 different countries. Here's a lovely map showing where all the Steppenwolf Now members are living. 70% of Steppenwolf Now members are outside of Chicago. So as you can see, the first few months of Steppenwolf Now have certainly been a success. And here are some things that I think we can learn from them. First of all, consider bundling your offerings into a membership for gift giving and for longer term engagement. When it comes to content, show me what the experience will be like. Don't just tell me. Think about how your programming can bring in new audiences, but also engaged lapsed ones. Keep KPIs other than ROI in mind if you're going to reach new audiences and audiences outside of your geographic region. And set modest goals and adjust over time. Okay, so now we're going to move all the way over to Columbus, Ohio to learn about the success of their entirely free offering and the impacts that they had on year-end giving. Ballet Met is Columbus's wonderful ballet company, and they put together a full Nutcracker experience for their audiences this year, knowing, of course, that they could not have them in person. Here you can see the landing page for a Nutcracker holiday, which was a month-long celebration of all things Nutcracker, including crafting videos, a cookbook, a scavenger hunt, and more. It also featured a 30-minute abridged version of the Nutcracker, utilizing archival footage and narration. This was a truly beautiful online experience that Ballet Met made free for their community, relying instead on donations to their year-end giving efforts to cover the costs. This turned out to be a really excellent example of how choosing to give away virtual content can generate goodwill with your audiences and make them more likely to donate when you ask. We supported fundraising message at the top of the campaign to ask people to support a Nutcracker holiday. Here you can see the posts that we supported, letting people know about a Nutcracker holiday and that their support would help bring this to the Columbus area community. So given that this programming was free, we prioritized reach and video view engagement for our success metrics. We decided, given that the many aspects that Ballet Met was offering to enjoy the holiday season, we wanted to open up our targeting to include holiday and ballet lovers all over Columbus and the surrounding areas, even if they had no previous connection with Ballet Met. Here is a quick taste of Ballet Met's trailer for a Nutcracker holiday, which evokes the nostalgia of the holiday season. Oh my gosh, I still miss Christmas. So embarrassing. Okay, so we elected not to open our campaign up any wider geographically than Columbus, Ohio. And even though it was virtual, and we could have, but we knew that ballet companies all over the world were doing their own version of the Nutcracker, and it just was not worth it to compete with that. So just because you can open things up geographically doesn't necessarily mean that you should. However, we did end up spending about 33% of the budget bringing in new Columbus area audiences for Ballet Met, who they will continue to engage in the coming months and years. In the end, our Nutcracker campaigns reached 139 unique users on Facebook and Instagram and drove significant traffic to that beautiful site I showed you earlier. It cost us just 56 cents to drive a page view, which is less than we saw in last year's normal Nutcracker campaign. We also saw 134,000 Facebook video views reported to the campaign for a cost of just 4 cents per view. So from a reach and engagement standpoint, we were really happy with these results. Ballet Met also reported 17,000 video views on their site, And most significantly, to the bottom line, the client completely surpassed their year-end fundraising goal as people were compelled to support the organization and the free programming. And while I was certainly not expecting it, I was super pleased to see that the Nutcracker campaigns resulted in a 522% ROI for contributions. So needless to say, this was a success, and here are some quick takeaways. If you're able, consider giving your content away for free. Beautiful experiences like a Nutcracker holiday can engage new and returning audiences, and in turn can help augment your fundraising efforts. Just because you can reach audiences all over the country with your virtual programming doesn't mean you necessarily should. Think about the right audience for your organization and your programming and hone in on them. And again, keep in mind your KPIs if they're not just ROI. You're putting together wonderful virtual experiences, and make sure you are measuring them properly. Overall, my biggest takeaway from the last 10 months is to have a spirit of experimentation. You are never going to know what works for your organization until you try something. So try it and measure it and learn from it, and then make changes to it. So that's it from me and the wonderful teams at Ballet Met and Steppenwolf. Thank you so much for your time. And over to you, Sasha.
Thank you, Sam, for the introduction. As she said, my name is Sasha Chen, and I am a senior search analyst at Capacity Interactive. I am an East Asian female with long black hair. I am wearing a light blue long sleeve shirt. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am coming to you from Manhattan, New York, which is also the native land of Munsee Lenape tribe. I am very delighted to be here and speak with you all, and I will be sharing about digital programming from a search perspective. It is not very hard to imagine that there has been some changes in search behaviors since the beginning of the pandemic. People started to search for things like things to do at home or activities during quarantine, as people's desire for entertainment, for finding things to do, continues to exist in the world we're living in. People are still using search to answer their questions, even if what they're asking for might have changed. Now let's look at some search trends that are related to our industry. We can see that there is a spike for terms like virtual concerts, as music lovers are looking for alternative ways to experience live music, or online dance classes, as people are looking for some fun at-home workout, or dancers want to continue to improve their skills. Or streaming opera, which saw a huge spike in March 2020 following the Met Opera's Live in HD announcement, and then the demand was lower but remained constant since then. Certain terms have seen a decline in search volume, such as concerts in New York, or more generally, concerts near me. People are just unlikely to search for those since they know the concert venues are very likely to be closed. Even if all the venues are closed, search volume for certain shows remains the same. For example, A Christmas Carol, we saw a spike in search demand at the end of last year, which was very comparable with 2019, and it was even higher than previous years. And then The Nutcracker, we saw a huge increase in volume, even though that spike was a little lower than before. So overall, people's habit of planning for the holidays and searching for their holiday favorites haven't just really changed that much. With all of the search trends in mind, I would like to dive into two organizations that I have worked with. The first one is Caramore Center for Music and the Arts. We have partnered with them on search engine marketing, specifically on Google Grant Management. To give you a little bit more information about Caramore, it is a performing arts center located in Westchester County, New York. They announced their 2020 summer season back in January. Then they pivoted the entire season to Summer 20 2.0 in May. And they shifted most concerts to live streams and still featured most of the original lineup. Following this announcement, we built out a general live stream campaign in the Google Grant account in case people search for things like live stream performances or live stream events. And as an experiment, we decided to open up the targeting to include searchers across the entire country. Given that this is in the Google Grant account and we are running campaigns with Google's free in-kind advertising credit, ROI was not an important metric, but we did need to watch out for Google Grant's policy requirement of maintaining an over 5% click-through rate across the entire account. From May to October 2020, we saw about 40% of the grant media was spent on this general live stream campaign. It was also very effective at driving traffic to the site. Compared to the same period in 2019, we saw the grant drive 70% more traffic to the site, despite the impact of the pandemic. The live stream campaign had a very high click-through rate at 8.5%, which was well above the grant requirement, even if we were doing national targeting. So that was a really positive indicator that searchers considered the ads to be relevant to what they were looking for. And this campaign really drove traffic from the entire country, such as searchers from California, Texas, and Florida. There was only less than 10% of traffic from the New York DMA. We also saw conversions really scattered across the entire country, although for the regular season, we typically see about 90% of conversions from the New York DMA. This is something I have been really seeing across multiple organizations, and most of the time running a general live stream campaign on search with broader geo-targeting really helps drive valuable non-branded traffic to the site. It is a very effective way to introduce newer people to the organization and the programming, which they are able to enjoy no matter where they are in the world. The second example I would like to discuss today is from Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. It is another great example of how providing people with high quality content can inspire them to donate to the organization. In April 2020, Ailey launched a free online initiative called Ailey All Access. It features weekly screenings of full-length performance videos, dance and fitness classes, as well as other original content. And at the end of last year, Ailey launched its first online season as part of its end-of-year fundraising efforts. The season included a wide variety of programming, including New York premieres, reinvented classics, workshops, and artist interviews. And again, all of the content was completely free to watch. On the search end, we built out campaigns for the discrete programming and also some general live stream performances and dance videos, keywords, and ad copy. Generally speaking, fundraising can be very challenging on search channels because from a user behavior perspective, people never search for things like, where can I make a donation? Because they would only donate to organizations that they already feel attached to. Or when they have, or when even when they have an organization in mind, they almost never search for things like make a donation to Alvin Ailey. And a more common path is that they would search for the organization's name, browse the site content, and then decide if they still want to donate. In the rare case that people already know they want to donate, we would want to provide those people with a very smooth and direct path to the donation page. And for Ailey, besides having dedicated donation keywords and ads, we also created a donation site link extension, which would run below any regular branding ads. And in this way, we were giving people the option to go to the donation page when they might be thinking about donating, but did not specifically search for it. And as what we expected, the actual donation ads were barely triggered to show at all. But the donation site link has shown over 27,000 times in December, together with other ads. We have seen some very interesting data on how donors enter the website. Over 20% of all donations in December was driven by people who searched for Ailey's digital programming, such as Ailey All Access or Ailey Dance videos. So these are people who wanted to check out their programming, but ended up also making donations. About 6% of donations were made by people who searched very broad terms looking for dance content, such as dance videos or virtual dance performances. These are people simply wanted to browse some dance-related content, and they didn't have a brand name in mind, but they also ended up making donations. Some of the content remained available on the site after the season ended. Even till now, when the digital season has ended a month ago, we are still seeing people searching for season-related terms, visiting the website, and then making donations, even long after the live-streamed event has ended. So this is really a valuable lesson of how free programming can inspire people to give to an organization. If you choose to produce live-streamed content, it is not over once the event has ended. I am sure there are many people who may have missed it or may simply want to see it again. And if you can repurpose your live content and have it available for those people, it can really help you get more from your efforts. So thank you all for your interest and attention. Now it is time for me to pass it over to my colleague, Rachel Purcell.
Hi, Sam and Sasha are tough acts to follow, but I am Rachel Purcell. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a 30-ish-year-old white woman with wavy brown hair wearing a light blue sweater, and I am speaking from the ancestral land of the Munsee Lenape people. I am a senior consultant here at Capacity Interactive, where I have been working with various arts organizations for just over 6 years now. In addition to the 3 institutions that you will hear me talk about in the next few minutes, I work with the Apollo Theater, Houston Ballet, the Children's Theater of Cincinnati, San Diego Opera, and a handful more. But my final addition to our round of case studies here focuses on Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and partly how they reached 340% of their end-of-year fundraising goal. That's 240% over goal after 8 months of paying to promote free or low-cost virtual content across social platforms. So the first performance of OSF's 2020 season took place on February 28th, 2020. Performances were supposed to run through the end of October. Like many, they had to rapidly pivot their programming to run in a pandemic-friendly format, as well as establish an aggressive fundraising campaign goal. So in the spring of 2020, the team was working around the clock to create free digital programming, some short form videos, and later some full-length recordings of some of the first week's worth of live performances, which had been originally filmed for archival reasons. And those were at a low rental cost of $15. The image on the screen right now shows the OSF landing page for digital programming on their website. And as you can see, it's organized by content category like OSF Originals or Conversations and Discussions. So they quickly launched this O platform to host this content as a virtual venue, as it were. OSF's programming also over time evolved to include content produced with or made available by partner organizations, including, among many others, This Is Who I Am, which was a paid live performance performed via Zoom. And that was produced in partnership with a handful of other theaters, including Woolly Mammoth in DC, but also the Carolyn Bryant Project, which was totally free and was presented in partnership with Cal Arts Center for New Performance, who had originally produced this work. So on the screen right now is a Facebook post screenshot and it highlights the New York Times write-up on the Carolyn Bryant Project, which certainly helped OSF have a hook for a potentially national audience for this particular free program. From April until December of 2020, fully 20% of OSF's Facebook and Instagram media spend was spent promoting totally free programs or other related content. Another 24% of media spend went towards promoting full-length, low-cost digital rentals. So ROI was definitely one overarching goal of OSF's digital campaigns, even the ones for free content. But we learned something else critical along the way, both for OSF and for a handful of our other partners, and I'll talk about a couple of them now. There is enormous value in building audiences of video viewers before, during, and after virtual events, as Sasha also mentioned. When it came time for a live streamed gala event in October, OSF targeted an audience of folks who had viewed gala trailers, both to drive RSVPs to the gala event itself, but also later to drive donations. And this is not to mention the folks who tuned in for the live gala experience itself and those who watched the gala stream or even those pre-gala trailers after the fact. This is on the screen right now is one of the pre-gala trailers, which utilizes past production B-roll and highlights some of the guest artists that people could expect to see joining virtually for the live event. So on the one hand, limited time access to virtual content, whether it's paid or free, does create an urgency and a sense of a live experience and a sort of community experience, which is great. However, people tuning in later can end up significantly increasing results, whether that's the number of users reached, video views, or donations. Building video content on social channels and then building targeting audiences off of folks who viewed that video content allows you to keep moving folks along the marketing funnel, even if in the absence of a really concrete revenue or ROI goal. Right now, what you're seeing is the trailer that was created for the live Zoom performances of This Is Who I Am in partnership with Woolly Mammoth Theater and some others. And it really shows the camera close-ups on our two characters preparing food, which was a central theme and constant visual of the play. What this all means is that if you are hosting your produced digital programs on a separate platform like OSF was, it's really helpful to create video trailer content that can live on Facebook and Instagram to tease that, but also to build people's engagement before they even leave the platform to go to your other platform. And video content can be particularly appealing to top of funnel or acquisition audiences, as Sam also touched on. Another client of mine that I would like to mention is the Soraya. The Soraya is a performing arts center in Southern California. And over the course of their 2020 pandemic era campaigns, the Soraya saw their lookalikes acquisition audiences drive an average of 58% video view rate on Facebook and Instagram, compared to a cumulative video view rate of 38% across segments. So 20 percentage points higher for lookalikes alone. The visual on screen right now is one example of a Soraya lead generation post. Later in the year, the Soraya ran a lead generation campaign specifically to audiences who had recently engaged with their social content, including people who had watched their virtual performance video content. A lead generation post encourages users to sign up to learn more about future online or hopefully one day in-person performances, while also highlighting some of the past performances. And the Soraya's lead generation campaign finished with a very efficient $2 cost per email sign up. Another example I'd like to highlight is Minnesota Orchestra, who ran a lead generation campaign as well and saw some of the highest volume of email signups from a lookalikes segment that was built from their video viewer audience. Moreover, in Minnesota Orchestra's end of year giving social campaign, we actually saw more donations attributed to the video viewer engagement segment than their retargeting segment or their donor target email segment. So now let's bring it back to Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I already told you that they came in more than 200% above their end of year fundraising goal, but it's important to remember that that did not happen in a vacuum. So from late November through the end of December, after months of investment in promoting free or low-cost paid virtual content, we ran a dedicated fundraising push across social channels, plus display and YouTube. The video playing on the screen right now is one type of content that OSF used, which were artist appeal videos. This one features actor Tyrone Wilson, who's a veteran actor at OSF, along with some B-roll from performances of his at OSF. Aided in part by those end-of-year fundraising digital campaigns, they ultimately reached 340% of their end-of-year fundraising goal. But what is particularly fascinating to note, in my opinion, is that across November and December 2020 social campaigns, the end-of-year giving campaign made up just 55% of attributed donations, which means that 45% of donations during that November-December timeframe was actually attributed to the content that was still running alongside the end-of-year giving content that was promoting more of those free programs or low-cost rentals. Across all April to December social campaigns, not just the very end of the year, a full 39% of donations attributed to social content was attributed to social content that was not focused on the gala and not focused on any kind of fundraising message. So what can we learn from this? I'm going to repeat something that my colleagues have said, the value of showing, not telling. I already mentioned that video content was particularly valuable to OSF, to the Soraya, and to Minnesota Orchestra. It is engaging in and of itself, and it gives audiences a concrete idea of what to expect from a live virtual performance. I'm showing the same trailer again from This Is Who I Am that we saw earlier. But I think that there's another meaning to show, not tell, which is show your community where their generous contributions are going. Highlight the work that you are still able to produce even in this pandemic, and bonus points if some of that is going to be totally free to the public. Again, from April until December, 44% of OSF's social media spend was promoting free or low-cost programming, and ultimately those media dollars drove 39% of donations. So there's no doubt in my mind that while we may not be able to directly tie attribution, this really was influencing prospective donors' perception of the organization. It was giving them a really specific picture of what their dollars were going to support, the work that was still able to be created with their support. And I would also like to note that Minnesota Orchestra also surpassed their end-of-year fundraising expectations. I don't think it's a coincidence that some of my partners who invested most heavily in creating and promoting a significant volume of free virtual content and also then used their engager audiences to keep speaking to people after they had viewed that free or low-cost content were the ones to beat their end-of-year fundraising goals. That's it for me, and I'll hand it back to Erik.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Samantha. That was phenomenal, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the questions that have come in. Before we do, just want to show this top 10 list again, and we can talk to a lot of these points, and we actually have a decent amount of time for lots of questions here. So consider offering both paid and free programming. Again, we're not saying only offer free, only offer paid, but we've seen combinations of that work. So seems to be a lot of chatter in the comments about this. So we're excited to talk about that. Free programming, we've seen it bolster fundraising campaigns. 3 is consider different KPIs for digital versus in-person programs. 4, track top of funnel KPIs for audience building. That's what Rachel was talking about with doing, and Samantha with the lead generation audiences or video view audiences. 5 was digital programming. It could be a great acquisition tool. We saw that. And 6, it can also be a great way to re-engage lapsed audiences. 7, just because you can target nationally, globally doesn't mean you should, and we should definitely talk about that as well and the pros and cons. And I don't know if there's like one simple answer, but I'm excited for our panel to weigh in more on that. Limited time access creates urgency. 9, keeping live digital programming active after a live event can drive additional engagement and donations. And we saw a few examples of this. Don't just tell, show. So let's start with the idea, because it seems like this is causing a lot of, or bringing up a lot of questions of the idea of free versus paid. I mean, I know you've worked on campaigns that are mostly paid. Some organizations went the mostly free route. Some did a combination of both, which I think ties into the idea of like sampling and giving the quality and building audiences. Who wants to talk about additional thoughts or learnings around that tension?
I guess I can just start by saying I don't think of a lot of it as free, because I think that the donation return that we often see, and this also applies to folks who have a suggested donation element to their messaging, even if they're not charging for something, in many cases can bring in as much or more than you would make if you were charging for something. And I'll also just note that a lot of the free content that OSF in particular, and also Minnesota Orchestra, were producing were, short form. We're talking 5-minute videos. I'm not talking about offering a full length 90-minute staged production for free. So I think that that's one line to draw and to consider, that using shorter free content as a hook can actually generate donations and interest in purchasing longer form paid content.
I would also add that when we're talking about this new world that we are in, I'm kind of sick of saying that, but it's true. Especially if we're trying to entice new audiences or just continue to engage with existing audiences, for me, it does go back to that idea of showing and not just telling. Virtual experiences are really varied and people have different expectations of what they're going to be seeing. And so if you can start to hook people in with like, let me show you the experience, let me give it to you for free, maybe at the beginning, or a short form version of it for free, then they know what to expect. And maybe then they'll be like, oh, that was great, I want to donate to that. Or you'll build up their excitement about it and then you can charge them down the line. I just think we're all navigating something so new that it's hard to just slap a price tag on something right away and know what people are willing to pay for it. So I really support the idea of suggested donations. I know some organizations have, looked in their Google Analytics and see what is the average donation that people are making after watching a video, and then maybe start with that suggested donation on your website. Then maybe you eke it up a little bit and see if you can get people to donate more.
Yeah, also following Rachel's and Sam's point, we really didn't expect to see like people searching for like dance videos and then enter Elise site and then make donations. So I feel like donations can be a little bit hard to expect results for, but like it has the ability to, generate goodwill in people, and then they will want to give something to the organization.
I think this ties to some real just core marketing principles, and anyone who works with us knows that we talk a lot about permission marketing, which is the idea of turning strangers into friends, friends into customers, and customers into evangelists. So a lot of the free or try before you buy is along that process, turning strangers into friends and then turning friends into customers. And so, I mean, I certainly think like to set the expectations of the kind of program people are going to see to go back to the idea of building a family of supporters around your institution or programming, particularly in this new world, and also showing generosity as an organization and give, ask. I think that sort of marketing style, we've seen it work so many ways, and I think the cap on that is the fact that so many people were donating. because they want to support arts institutions, because they know arts institutions make the world better and make our lives better and provide a sense of connection. So I don't think there's one right answer either. I think this is, again, about experimentation, and I don't think the rules necessarily apply of, some people were writing about the rules of like never give any away for free, don't do broad discounting. And we're not saying do broad discounting, but we're not in a world where there's, this is a whole other question around like scarcity and make scarcity models. And if you're really interested in that topic, next See Eye to Eye podcast that's coming out next week is with the CEO of Baker Richards in London, and we talk for like 20 minutes about this topic and pricing for live, which is not necessarily the topic here, but I hope we've at least shedded some insight from a digital marketing strategy of how free can support paid and how free can support donations.
Erik, can I just one more thing about that, about the idea of like giving it away for free, because I feel like we are talking a lot about giving things away for free, but remember that you're getting something in return for it too. You're getting like an email lead if you're asking people to sign up. You're getting people to engage with you on social media, and those are pools that you can follow up with. You're getting people to your website where you can remarket to them. So it might not end up like a full like one-to-one transaction. You're still building a relationship with those audiences, and you can continue to communicate with them and talk to them later about donations. So it's giving something away for free, but you are getting something too.
Yeah, and another topic that came up here, which we also talk about in the podcast that's coming out next week, is like, what do you do with these new because I'm changing topics here. Another tension that came up in the comments and that we talked about was the idea of local versus more broadly geographic. And so some of the questions that came up around that is like, this is a question for Sam, and then we can broaden the conversation. The question, and maybe not, what do you do with non-local members? Like, what was the conversation of like how, and I really appreciate the folks from Steppenwolf commenting and that there's great dialogue going on in the chat, but what do you do with the non-local members after after the pandemic is over? Magical time. Sam, we should talk about that with the team at Steppenwolf.
Yeah. And I have talked about this with a lot of my clients who have decided to open things up geographically, because they're probably sick of me saying this, but I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? Because it's probably going to hurt the ROI. But the goal was to get this in front of new people, and people, especially, Steppenwolf has brand recognition outside of Chicago. And this was an opportunity to really bring that brand to people who can't normally go to see their production. So, they produce and co-produce shows on Broadway and in LA. And so they wanted to be able to reach out to those people as well in a way they can't normally do. So certainly I have talked to them a lot about like, what are we going to do with these audiences? In fact, we had a conversation this morning about it. Some thoughts percolating, probably nothing I can share too much right now. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think everyone knows everyone's seasons are evolving a lot. But I think that we all know that when things go back to normal, they're probably not going to like really go fully back to normal right away. I know a lot of people are thinking about hybrid seasons, about still offering some kind of virtual programming. And I think it is really important, if you are going to spend that kind of money reaching outside of your normal sphere, to think about the longer term plan for those audiences and how you want to continue to engage them. So I can't share too many details on it, but I can say that that is definitely a conversation that I'm having with a lot of my clients who've done geographic reach.
I would also add that Oregon Shakespeare Festival has a very considered approach to the ideas of accessibility and just wanting what they can offer to be broadly accessible. And I really loved their framing of their virtual platform as a virtual venue, as another venue of theirs. And one of the things that they had hoped to do is, to whatever extent it's possible, maintain that even once there is able to be live programming. There will, as Sam mentioned, there will be hybrid periods, but there's also an opportunity here to maintain, if you're interested, some kind of a virtual venue for people outside of your market, even beyond the pandemic.
which opens up questions around resources and also presents a real challenge for segmentation. And, if someone, when we get back to in person, what is your strategy going to be for people who are not local? Are you going to send them every email? Are you going to invite them to come to every event that you have at the theater, or are you going to segment them and only share virtual programming? So we've, in terms of our targeting of how we look at geographic reach of our campaigns traditionally, I think there's been a lot of evolution in how we do that internally. There's, a lot of questions here around, someone said, of targeting outside your local area, what's best practice on focusing on larger markets, which may have more competition, versus smaller markets with less likelihood of products available? What are organizations planning to do with non-local leads? We talked about that. What is the long-term programming strategy? So, I guess, does that bring up anything for anybody?
I didn't hear part of what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So I guess the question is, like, I think I'd like someone to talk about how traditionally we've looked at remarketing as a larger geographic reach, but we target locally. Does anyone want to talk to that? No. Rachel.
Well, one thing that I know that this is not even remotely an apples to apples comparison to the work that most of us are doing, but I feel like this is something that we've been talking about even pre-pandemic, where we use Hamilton as an example, where the mass release of the Hamilton soundtrack and then ultimately the Disney Plus release of the filmed production did not diminish interest in coming to New York to see Hamilton on stage, or Chicago or San Francisco or LA or anywhere else where they're planted. It quadrupled interest in coming to see it live on stage. And I think that, this has already been an evolving conversation where we've typically targeted the entire US or Canada when we're looking at bottom of funnel audiences, website visitors, people who have engaged with social content. And really what you're doing is you're building those bottom of funnel audiences. If you've got somebody who's watched all 15 of your virtual productions and they're not based in your city, they're going to come visit when they can travel again, hopefully.
Sasha, we have a very specific search question, so I'm going to direct this next one to you. Asking, is this all done, the case studies that you talked about, is this all done within a grant account? I'm surprised very general keywords like dance videos even served out.
That is a very great question. So both of the examples I showed are done in the Google Grant account. And there is a very, a requirement that very generic terms might be a violation of the Google Grant policy, but this is really different account by account. And there are ways that we can improve the keyword quality score, so Google will allow those keywords to show in the grant account, such as making sure the keyword is in the ad copy and also on the landing pages. But overall, there's really no guarantee that Google will approve all of those keywords, but we have a higher chance if the keywords you are trying to rank for is relevant to the video content.
Thanks for that question. So another theme through the chat is this idea of marketing and programming working together. And I always say, like, great digital marketers are not just like strategically great on the outside, but they have a good rules for engagement internally and not operating in silos. And I think the pandemic has certainly shed a lot of light on that. We've seen a lot of wins in this area. So I want to raise to the panel, in your experience of working with clients, do you have strategy recommendations for marketing digital programming? That's not a question. Working with programming teams. So do you have strategy recommendations for marketing digital programming that's announced very last minute? And then there is another one that was more around, where there's tension between marketing and programming. how are we supposed to, be successful marketing when the programming is feeling threatened or not providing content quick enough? And so it's sort of like it sounds like there's a real silo problem. So how?
I just want to say you're not alone. I've heard that from a lot of organizations, to be honest. I think everyone is learning how to do their jobs right now and how to navigate what we're going through. So I've heard a lot of marketers say, like, I think something's happening, but I don't really have any details because I haven't heard from the programming team and I'm not going to have content in time. And I totally hear you, and it's tricky. I think the one thing I would say is the beauty of selling virtual programming, either selling it, like actually charging for it, or giving it away for free, is that I think the consideration period and the lead up time is much, much shorter than it is for buying a ticket to an in-person experience. I'm sure most of you have seen that as well. And probably from your own behavior as well. Like, you're not necessarily signing up to view a free video 2 weeks in advance. So I think that is one thing that kind of takes solace in. And so once you do have the content and you are ready to advertise it, luckily, the advertising channels that we're talking about, particularly Facebook and Instagram, you can really ramp up on those very quickly once you do have the content you need to get started. And hopefully, if you have a shorter lead time, like, maybe that's okay for something like that, since people aren't planning in advance. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is, like, I feel like this is very much like a case of like siloed departments and all of that, like Erik was saying. And I think that is definitely trickier in the Zoom world that we're in. But, remembering and saying to your programming team, we are all in this together. We want people to come attend your virtual programming. So help us help you, sort of situation whenever possible.
Okay. Question came in. Thank you, Sam. Would love to hear more unpacking of the lookalike audience strategy from Rachel.
Oh, okay. So I think that something that I've been learning, and there was a CI blog post about this a while back, is that we've always been in favor of behavioral targeting, right? Like, thinking about targeting people based on their behavior, i.e. visiting a certain page of your website, rather than targeting based on, I want to be marketing on the New York, showing up on the NewYorkTimes.com. And I've been trying to approach lookalike strategy in a very similar way over the course of the pandemic, which is to say, in a previous world, we might have focused our lookalikes audiences on like a seed list of single ticket buyers, for example. We might have uploaded a CRM list, and that would be our lookalike audience. But what I've started to think about more is the people who buy single tickets are not necessarily 100% of the time going to be the people who are tuning in for virtual content. So I think that there has been enormous power for a lot of my clients in using video viewer audiences as that seed for the lookalike, because that's behavioral. You're selling ultimately, in the end of the day, a video program, a video product to a group of people that look like people who have engaged with videos. And there's a direct line there. And that was something that we didn't talk a lot about YouTube in this particular session, but that's also proved true on YouTube in my experience, that targeting people who have viewed videos on your YouTube channel for virtual video programming has a much higher return than we would see targeting YouTube video viewers for a live in-person experience. So I think that's one really important element of this. One thing that I'll say about lookalikes is lookalikes are built from Facebook's secret sauce algorithm, where they're taking into account all of these factors in whatever that seed list is. And lookalikes can actually be a little bit limiting, I've found, if you are targeting nationally, because the data input is mostly coming from your geographic region. So forcing a lookalikes audience to serve nationwide can be kind of tricky. And if you target the entire US with a lookalikes audience based on your single ticket buyers, they're probably going to spend 50+% of those media dollars in your immediate geographic area anyway. So I think that lookalikes can be really powerful, particularly when they're behaviorally thoughtful in a more local audience. But if you're targeting more nationally, they're not always the best.
Awesome. Thank you. We are always down to get in the digital marketing feed. I'm going to open a Pandora's box here, and because a question came in that I think is important to address, and we certainly don't have a lot of time to address it. And the question is, how have the changes with Apple's privacy settings affected the way you target on Facebook and Instagram? Have you seen a decrease in effectiveness of Facebook advertising? So we've been talking about this a ton internally. We are planning rollouts of talking about this more externally, but I feel like Rachel is actually leading our internal task force in this area. So I want to just give you a few minutes, because I think this is just a huge topic on minds of anyone working in digital marketing today. So Rachel.
No pressure, y'all.
It's all you, Rachel.
So yes, I mean, it's going to have a really significant impact. Something that a lot of my colleagues have been bringing up in our internal conversations, though, and something that Sam mentioned earlier today, is that we're seeing a much shorter consideration period right now for virtual content. So one of the biggest changes is the attribution window, which is moving from being able to look at 28 days to 7 days. That actually doesn't affect us when virtual content is involved at nearly the level that it might for in-person events. So there's going to be a rollout of this, and I think we'll all have to adjust our expectations as we go and as we get into bigger commitments financially that might sort of trigger a longer consideration period. And that's when you're going to start really seeing the impact of that shortened attribution window on Facebook's part. But I think that the important thing to keep in mind with all of these changes is that, as far as we know, user behavior is not changing. There are still, I think the last numbers were 2.6 billion monthly active users on Facebook. So just because we can't, be potentially as hyper-specific in our targeting or have as much campaign attribution as we have in the past, folks are still on these platforms. It's still a major step in the consideration process. And until we start to see people leave these platforms in droves, it's still going to be a top recommendation for us in terms of a platform to be on, because quite simply put, there's still far and above the most eyeballs on these couple of social networks than almost anywhere else on the internet. I think that's the main overview.
Anyone want to add anything? No. Yeah, it's very complex. It's shaking things up, and we always say, like, in the 10 plus years of Capacity Interactive, there's always these sort of like pillars where the rules change, and we panic, and then we figure it out, and we adapt. And so like that idea that like the way we can measure is changing, but like the expectations, like ROIs are going to look different because the equation to measure the ROIs has the rug has been ripped out. So we are working on finding ways to communicate this, certainly to our clients, and we'll look out for some additional communications in that area. But thank you for raising that complex question, because it's certainly on our minds. So we have just a little over 5 minutes left, and I don't know if there's anything in particular that you feel like you all want to say. Raise your hands while I scroll for more questions here. Actually, I'm going to ask my own question that I prepared. What has been the hardest kind of product or programming to sell, and what has been the easiest type of product or programming to sell, and why do you think that is?
Go ahead.
Please.
I can easily think of what I feel like is the easiest one to sell, which is that I have some clients that have just produced like very few virtual programs, and they have spent a lot, and I'm not saying that ones who are promoting a lot are not putting a ton of time into it, because of course you are, but you know, they're sort of more scarce, and I feel like those have been easier to sell because your audiences are clearly hungry for it, and so it's been easier to get people to kind of bite because the virtual experiences have been more few and far between. So I would say those have been on the easier side, I think. And I'll think about what's harder.
I know what's the hardest for search campaigns. So like either shows that have like very low search volume, because we cannot like generate search volume on our own. And then the second types of shows that's really hard to sell is like names, the show titles that are too generic. For example, like I have a client and they have a performance called Love, which, you know, can cover a lot of things. So it will not be wise to run a search campaign because it can cover a lot of things.
I think I also have an easier example and have to think a little more about the harder example, but Oregon Shakespeare Festival saw a lot of success over the summer in monetizing the two of the plays that would have been in their 2020 live season. And I think that was particularly easy sell because people were already excited to see those plays. You know, they'd been announced in the season, they had a lot of hype. So seeing a filmed virtual version of it is of course not the same, but it felt like, oh, this is a natural carryover from what I was hoping or expecting to see from this organization. And I will absolutely take the opportunity to watch it virtually. Whereas I think it can be a little bit trickier to sell something that's completely new and nobody has any context for. That's not to say that those projects are not completely worthwhile. It's just a little bit more of an uphill battle.
I have a fly visitor who is like very friendly, and I'm really trying to be Buddhist and not kill bugs. And you know, he or she was being very good until the last 5 minutes, where it is now circling around my head. Okay, so any final thoughts before we wrap up here? You all are fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentations and all your work you do for our clients, and for being such sports with all of these questions that are not easy and don't have simple answers. Thank you to everybody who attended today. And if you enjoyed the session, please hit the thumbs up button below, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you, Samantha, Sasha, Rachel, and the fabulous Capacity Interactive marketing and operations team who work tirelessly to help make these events possible. Keep an eye on your inbox. We're announcing some really awesome programming coming up, and have a great day. Good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.